There are some innovative new ideas in the budget which will be spoken of, but there are also some financial measures which will have a very negative impact on the stock markets in particular. I want to go across to Harsh Madhusudan Gupta first on the increase in the long-term capital gains tax from 10% to 12%. Adding to the short-term capital gains tax makes sense because you want to cut down on speculative activities. But when the idea has been to push investors into mutual funds, bring them into the markets, why would the government do something like this?
I think the government has also increased the exemption from 1 lakh to 1.25 lakhs. So I think it's a trade-off. I agree that it's an increase on patient capital. Nonetheless, 10 to 12.5% when the markets are booming.
But they won't be booming if you keep increasing taxes in this fashion. Punita Sinha is looking most disappointed. 2.5% of her returns in her portfolio just went out. You'll have to pay more to be...
But you see, I mean, this was what markets were worried about, right?
Yes.
That there would be this tinkering. Is that the reason why the markets are in the red at the moment?
Yeah, because I don't think anyone was talking about an increase in a long-term capital. I mean, there was speculation, but it wasn't something that was widely expected.
No, but this will...
Yeah, so
impact the mood terribly. Why would they do this? I'm trying to understand, Subhash.
Well, I think,
increasing, you've explained that speculative activities are going off. We need to clamp down on futures trading. There's too much gambling happening. That's understandable. This is long-term capital gains tax. You've got it stable at 10%. It's going okay. The markets are doing well. Investors are investing. Why give them this?
But I'll just say one thing. Globally, at least in the US, long-term capital gains tax rate is 20%. So India was far lower. So maybe there's some rationalization going on.
But if it isn't broke, why fix it?
That's the point.
Yeah, but the fact is, the fact is what you said in the morning, right? There were people who the government felt had benefited.
But that's not a long-term capital gains tax. Ek saal se zyada hold karna padta hai, sure.
Long-term capital gains tax, there are people who benefited hugely in the last few years. Why should they, at some level or the other, not pay a little bit more? Is the government's rationale?
And our income tax rates are higher than our capital gains tax.
So I think from the short-term perspective, market, how does it react? It might look to be a terrible move or non-politically correct move from the government's point of view. But if you look at the long-term health and the fair bit of taxation between the labor-earning people and those who earn from capital, I think both the measures, the options, derivatives, as well as raising the long-term capital gains is...
No, but Rajiv Kumar makes an important point. Why fix something which...
This is not fixing. This is fixing for long term. Let me also tell you that the 10% was introduced when I was in the system.
From zero.
And this was very widely criticized. This will also be criticized. But we should move, as Devina was also saying, towards a fair bit of taxation for the long term.
You need foreign capital to come and invest in your assets here. You need households savings to go into financial instruments.
Foreign investors don't pay
Most of the foreign investors don't pay capital gains
tax.
Why not?
All sovereign funds are exempt. All foreign funds...
No, but this is about all those who are watching India today at this time, whether they've got direct equity investments or they're investing through mutual funds or through alternate investment funds or through whatever tool they're using to invest, they'll have to pay more tax.
No, of course they will.
Yeah, but think about it. I mean, if you get money, put money in a fixed deposit, you pay the income tax rate.
Everywhere you pay.
You get capital gains, you're getting lower. So maybe now that the market is more mature,
interest you pay.
they can raise the levels and rationalize
Plus, she hasn't signaled direction. Is the idea to take it from 12.5 further to 15, 17.5 to 20? I mean, that's deeply problematic.
Why should they say it?
No, because it will have an impact on the mood in the markets.
You may interpret. But if the market interprets it this way, that maybe next year it will go to 15%, it will sell off more. But necessarily that's not a bad
But
direction.
presumably they did this because this was at a time when the markets have been buoyant pre-budget. What you said
they were maybe overheating. I mean, the logic would be that the markets are overheating.
This was the right time to do it. You wouldn't want to do it at a time when if you'd gone into the budget over a couple of months where the markets were depressed. You've gone into it where there's already been a pre-budget rally. So you can soften, just think about it in 2004. You remember the famous budget where the markets crashed and A.B. Bardhan, the CPI leader, said, "Bhaad mein jai markets," and everyone judged that budget from the market's perspective. I don't think it would be fair to judge it purely by whether the markets are in the red or not, given the short-term reaction. I think there was much more before.
No, sure.
I think the political aspects of it, for me, have stood out. This was not so much a union budget. At some time, for a while, it was a budget for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. I mean, we are a country with 28 states, Rahul, and yet all the focus, when it came to specific allotments, is for 2 states of the country.
No,
I mean, what's the message there?
No, but
that
that's
the other
not
26
fair.
states
A lot
of
of the
this country
scheme,
don't
that
matter.
Purbodaya scheme was for all eastern states, not like they've
Come
conveniently
on.
clubbed Bihar and Andhra.
The
And of course, that's
specific
true.
allotments were very clear were for Bihar and for Andhra Pradesh. You speak about tourism, you focus on Bihar. You speak about infrastructure, you give specific allotments to Bihar. I mean, there are 28 states in this country.
I think it was only cleverly called Purbodaya.
Exactly.
But there is nothing for the poor, other poor
You're being unfair.
I'm being unfair by saying it was Bihar and
because
Andhra
the
Pradesh.
first and second priority of this budget and allocation were agriculture and employment and skill development. And a lot of money has been allocated there.
I'm just talking about state-wise.
This is a budget which is with its ears to the ground and not being in denial about those things. I think you should give credit to that.
So you give credit for the fact that they put employment on top, which is great.
Yes.
You give credit for the fact that they put rural infrastructure and agriculture on top, which is great.
On top.
But you should also raise questions, surely, that in a country of 28 states, 29 with Jammu and Kashmir, that only 2 states should figure for such a large part of the finance minister's speech. Is that, I mean, what does it say to the 26 other states of the country?
It's clearly the political.
Why not accept that politically he had to reach out to JDU and TDP?
Correct.
If I may just add that some
political
of the
reality.
points
As you
mentioned,
kept saying,
the
political
money would be raised through
compulsions, right?
multilateral
What will the market
agencies.
do?
So it's not part of the fiscal
I can't
spend of the
say.
government. It will
I
be
can't
probably
say.
World Bank or Asian Development Bank loans. So to that extent, the political job is also done without hitting the fiscal aspect of it.
The strongest playing card you can have in politics is to be an ally to a government in minority. You know, you can pretty much swing the government and make them dance to your tunes. Bihar and Andhra Pradesh very clearly
I would not say it's
benefiting.
chancing. They said no to the special category. They said no to the special
So that
status.
was
You've got
impossible.
They've done it through a
allocations.
back door, halfway there, halfway here.
No, but Bihar and Andhra have got, make no mistake, a much better deal than they would have otherwise.
I
Well,
think
let's wait for the
Rahul,
numbers. Let's wait for
we
the
will need
numbers.
to look at the numbers.
Yes,
Because the
exactly.
kind of package which has been announced, how would the money go for the capital project or for the Polavaram, for others? Is it being allocated? Only at some stage she said grants. But at other places, she didn't say either as loan or outside the budget or how. I think we'll need to look at
The details.
So they also mentioned using multilateral agencies. So they did say that, but you know, I thought that the specific allotments were for these 2 states in a manner.
It's not reflected in the fiscal deficit number.
Sure.
You have still 0.2%.
Which is again a strength of this government.
Exactly.
I mean, when you look at 4.9% fiscal deficit, the government will claim that they've got that completely, they've got their fiscal management completely
No, but that
at least on track.
In long term, this is with reference to what she announced as 4.5. But 4.5 itself is a very high fiscal deficit.
4.9.
No, now 4.9, but the goal of 4.5%
for FY26.
itself is a very large fiscal deficit. Our act says 3%.
Yeah, 3.5, 3.
No, but
3%.
nobody so far even bothered about the financial...
No. In the first time, it's the same government.
Yes, but now they're making an effort to at least tend in that direction.
That is what
I
I'm
want to compliment
saying.
them for being
But
financially
let's also be
conservative and
fair,
not being
Mr. Khan,
reckless.
given the scale, I mean, one thing that the Modi government has tried to do is put its welfare schemes on scale. I mean, when you talk of 3 crore Awas Yojanas, they've tried in a way to saturate welfare schemes. So naturally there will be some pressure. They've had headroom because of the RBI dividend. The question that I have is, at the end of the day, do you see this as a budget with political messaging or a budget that has set us on the roadmap for the next 5 years or 25 years, as the Prime Minister said? I saw nothing, Rahul, with due regard to suggest what our roadmap for the next 5 or 25 years is.
Let's take the 2 big ideas. I want Subhash Gar to come in on the employment-linked incentives. The Congress is saying, "Ye to hamara idea tha." The BJP is saying, "We've brought it, so obviously it's our idea." But the big question is, by giving these incentives to employees and employers, will it actually foster job creation in your view?
So the emphasis on employment and job creation is fabulous.
Yes.
It has to be there, it must be there. But when you go into the contents of it, I think we will need to go more. My sense, the way I read, is that a lot of it is still in the form of giving some PF kind of contributions, which are there for last 7 years. We have ABRY, before that we another scheme which was doing for last 7 years. So is there a new way?
No, but do they work?
So
does a financial incentive for job creation work in this fashion?
may not actually work. It adds to the new EPFO numbers, etc., which we see quite often. How would the new internship scheme would add?
No, so I'll come to
That's very
internships
large.
in just a moment.
Well,
Rajiv Kumar.
a friend of mine just sent me a message saying that I think one of the schemes that they've got for employment link is based on the fact that your first job gets you 1 lakh and more. Now, many of them are arguing, where am I going to...
Up to 1 lakh.
Up to 1 lakh
Not
and more.
1 lakh and more. Up to 1 lakh. It is up to jobs
Up to
that pay
1
1
Up to 1 lakh.
Yeah,
Now,
yes.
the question is that how many jobs eventually will actually benefit from this? How many employers will actually take advantage of this ELI scheme?
That is very important. Does something substitute? Or it's actually a new
No,
job?
but even if it substitutes, at least those jobs are now in the formal market.
One goes
They have
out,
protections.
another comes in.
No, but the biggest question, Harsh, is
Hang on.
will this limited incentive encourage any employer to add to the number of people he employs because of this incentive
To
that's
add
been
to
given?
Mr. Garg's points, it is possible that instead of informal jobs on the margin, that job might now become a classified formal sector job.
To claim the incentive.
Yeah, but then that helps the employee to get some kind of protections in terms of hiring and firing, some pensions, some at least 2-3 months of cooling off period if they have to,
Then the
resign from
employer
job.
will compare
Yes,
the advantages
exactly.
of getting
So the
this
trade-off-
incentive versus the disadvantage of having this guy formally
in
on
an
his
informal
roles.
sector. Exactly. So it moves the
Rajiv,
needle
why do you
towards
think it will
something.
work? Because that's one of the big ideas, the employment-linked incentive. It
I-
sounds phenomenal in theory. Does it, in your view, could it work in practice?
No, I think it will work in
Why?
practice. Because the employer for the first time will have the incentive not to hire contract labor, but to hire formal labor on its roles. I think that's a very big idea. And therefore,
Exactly.
and also the internship, thing, the 3,000 rupees that the government is paying on the internship, I think is again a very good idea because, it will encourage employers.
What kind of internship? So somebody comes and
Rajiv-
interns with any company, they'll get this
The
internship
top-
allowance?
They said 500 companies, and it'll, that
CPSEs.
people- yeah, sorry.
500 CPSEs.
So only for public sector
And
enterprises?
amongst them, at
Amongst
least 500
them
CPSEs.
also the others.
No, how will this work? Just try and explain from what you've understood. How will this
you asked
internship
him,
scheme?
Rajiv, so it's only the first pay you government is giving.
No,
so
no.
employer has to think about
The first
No, it's still
timer.
4 years. It's
I thought it's first year.
The first
It's
year.
the first year.
First timer.
First timer, first
timer.
year.
First timer, they will
first
pay
month
the,
of the first year.
No, first year.
First year, first timer, first
It's a
year.
very big
एक time के लिए करोगे तो nobody will do it.
So,
Then what's the
so
point?
in a sense, I think that's the biggest, I think that's what
It's a
the
big
government will claim is the biggest takeaway, that they've recognized that there is a jobs challenge.
That's right.
They've recognized that they need to
Correct.
do something for those who have, for both companies as well as the youth who have been banging at the doors, especially young, at election time as well, that Rozgar is a major concern.
No, so they'll
Whether this is a
accept
game changer, I think is a
Yes,
huge
we'll
question
have to
mark.
do.
How employers, I know Mr. Rajiv Kumar is saying employers will be tempted to formalize labor. I'm not so sure that, I think we're going to have to see whether that actually works
No, so I
on the
think
ground.
what's very clear is that the
Yeah.
government is acknowledging that job creation is an
Absolutely.
essential challenge, and they've thrown something
Correct.
at it.
Absolutely.
They've thrown some ammunition at it.
Absolutely.
The efficacy with which this works is something that really needs to be determined. But it's a big idea that's been thrown up. Harsh, the Congress will say, and many Congress leaders were messaging at this time, boss, this was our idea. You're copying from our
There is
manifesto.
no harm in getting good ideas from the Congress or from Germany. The point is who gets to implement it and implement
You're
it
saying
well.
the Congress got the idea from
Yeah, so there
Germany.
is no harm in even if it's a Congress idea. Except talking point, I don't see any downside to it.
And just as a humorous
Make Congress
aside,
come up with more
just
ideas.
as a humorous aside, and to show how politics works, actually, when you looked at an earlier Congress manifesto, many of the farm laws that the Narendra Modi
Yes,
government brought were
absolutely.
in that Congress manifesto. And the Congress then went and opposed those ideas because they were in the opposition. So where you stand in Indian politics depends on where you sit. I think it's good if the government takes something which the opposition has put out, which has caught the imagination. The Congress called it a right to apprenticeship. The
They're
government
calling
is
it an
calling it
incentive for internship.
But it's essentially the same broad idea that's coming
No,
forward.
but can
Yes,
you
ma'am.
explain,
So I
Subhash
just
Garg,
wanna-
what you've understood
Yes.
of how this internship
Sorry?
scheme will work?
So
Yes.
internships, now think about it from the employer's perspective. I hope it doesn't become another Narega. Ki you get money, but you don't really get trained.
Is
Who has
internship
it
only
back?
for
you see,
government
that's
companies or
my
is it
worry.
for private companies as well?
Yeah.
Is
So
internship
It's
only
for private company.
For private as well
Nobody
as
has
CPS.
time for interns.
And like, if, for
Train
example,
them.
somebody interns with the India Today group, the government will give an internship
That's correct.
allowance for
That's
that.
correct.
For all companies.
You can be rest assured the way government schemes work, there will be some criteria and it won't be easy to just get 3,000 rupees.
Correct.
Mr. Garg can explain that better. So I'm not...
He's the one who puts the devil in the details.
It won't
So
be
how
like
is this
3,000
likely
rupees
to
for
work?
everybody.
No, we will have to see. Internship is a different concept than apprenticeship.
The two different things.
Apprenticeship, you are learning some skill. Internship, you are studying somewhere and then you are doing some kind of work with someone, which is
Isn't
not correct.
apprenticeship more logical than internship?
No, both are logical.
Both are required.
Internship is a very well recognized mode of doing some getting work experience.
Actually, the distinction between the two is very blurred. Because internship and apprenticeship are pretty much the same thing, because you are doing...
No, you're not
Let's get
graduating.
in Sunil Munjal to find out how employers are looking at
Employment-linked
incentives. Sunil Munjal, good to have you on the show. Your first reaction to the budget, specifically, if we may start, because we've been debating it, this big idea of an employment-linked incentive scheme. Will it be bought by employers, or will employers want to study the detail before going ahead?
No, for anything, you obviously want to study the details about what all of the implications are before anything gets implemented, and that's a natural ask. But overall, I thought the budget was more like a statement of intent of 5 years rather than just a one-year budget. She covered such a wide spectrum. There was a smattering of things right across, right from girls, women, agriculture, startups. There was almost no area left untouched. A lot of it, however, said that we will do a study over the next 6 months. We will come back with more details. A lot of it also was encouraging multilateral agencies to get involved, whether with states or with small industry, etc. They did, however, back that up by saying that the government will provide the guarantees for those.